The rain poured heavily, drumming against the dark asphalt road. Raj, a young man in his late 20s, pulled his hood over his head and quickened his pace. The small town was quiet, only the occasional flickering streetlight breaking the darkness. He had just finished a long shift at the bookstore and was heading home when something unusual caught his eye. A figure standing near a dimly lit alley. At first, he thought it was just another person waiting for the rain to stop, but something felt off. As he stepped closer, the figure moved. It was a woman, tall, slender, but strangely dressed. Her clothes were unlike anything Raj had ever seen, a mix of metallic fabric and dark flowing material. But what startled him most was her eyes, large, glowing faintly in the dim light. Raj's breath caught in his throat. "Are you okay?" he asked cautiously. The woman flinched at his voice, as if she hadn't expected to be noticed. She took a step back, her movements unnaturally smooth. Then she spoke, her voice soft but urgent. "Help me," she said. Raj hesitated. "Help you with what?" She glanced behind her, as if checking for someone. "They are looking for me." A chill ran down Raj's spine. Who was looking for her? And why did she seem so afraid? Before he could ask more, a low humming noise echoed through the air. The woman's expression changed. Panic flashed across her face. "Please," she whispered, stepping closer. "You must hide me." Raj didn't know what was happening, but something told him that this woman was in danger, and against all logic, he nodded. "Come with me." He turned and started walking, his heart pounding. He had no idea what he had just gotten himself into. The alien woman, still weak and trembling, stared at the human with disbelief. She had never expected kindness from his kind. In her experience, humans were unpredictable, dangerous even. But here he was, offering her food, warmth, and safety. She hesitated before taking a small bite of the food he had given her. The taste was strange, unlike anything she had eaten before, but it was warm and filling. Her body, desperate for nourishment, accepted it eagerly. The human watched her closely. "You need more?" he asked, his voice gentle. She looked up at him, her deep violet eyes filled with confusion. Why was he helping her? Was this a trap? No, if he wanted to harm her, he would have done so already. Slowly, she nodded. He handed her another piece, and she ate in silence. After a few moments, he spoke again. "My name is Ryan," he said, pointing at himself. "What's yours?" She hesitated. Giving her name felt risky, but at the same time, this human had already saved her life. "Tivala," she finally whispered. Ryan smiled. "Nice to meet you, Tivala." Tivala didn't know how to respond. In her culture, introductions were formal and filled with tradition. But this human made it seem so simple, so casual. As she finished eating, exhaustion took over. Her body was still weak from hunger and injury. Ryan noticed her struggle and gestured toward the small couch in his room. "You should rest." Tivala tensed. Sleeping in an unfamiliar place, near a human, was risky. But right now, she had no choice. She nodded slightly and carefully lay down, keeping her eyes on him. Ryan sighed and leaned back in his chair, watching over her. He had so many questions. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why was she alone and starving? But those could wait. For now, she needed to rest. And for some reason, Ryan felt the need to protect her. The cave was silent except for the soft crackling of the fire. The human Daniel sat across from the alien woman, who now seemed more relaxed. Her violet eyes reflected the flames, full of unspoken emotions. "Are you feeling better now?" Daniel asked, his voice gentle. The alien woman nodded slowly. "Yes." "Warmer." She hesitated before adding, "You are kind." Daniel chuckled. "Not really. Just seems like you needed help." She studied him for a moment before looking down. "My name is Zuri." Daniel smiled. "Nice to meet you, Zuri." She hesitated again, then finally asked, "Why help me? You do not know me. I could be dangerous." Daniel shrugged. "Maybe, but you don't seem like a threat. Just someone who's lost." Zeri's gaze dropped to the small piece of bread Daniel had given her earlier. She had never tasted anything like it before. Slowly, she tore another small piece and ate it. After a few moments of silence, she finally spoke again. "I am running." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "From what?" Zeri's body tensed. "Hunters. They are after me. If they find me." She trailed off, fear creeping into her voice. Daniel frowned. "Who are these hunters?" She hesitated. "They are not human. They do not belong to this planet. They want me because of what I am." Daniel's mind raced with questions, but he could see she was afraid. Pushing her too much wouldn't help. Instead, he simply said, "You're safe here, at least for now." Zeri looked at him with something close to gratitude. "You are strange, Daniel." He grinned. "Yeah, I get that a lot." For the first time, a small smile appeared on Zeri's face, but it quickly faded as a distant sound echoed outside the cave. A sharp, unnatural noise. Zeri's expression turned serious. "They are close." Daniel's heart pounded. "Then we better come up with a plan." The night was colder than before. The wind whispered through the broken structures, and the distant sound of nocturnal creatures echoed in the air. The alien girl, still weak but recovering, sat beside the small fire the human had built. Her large, luminous eyes reflected the flickering flames, filled with a mixture of curiosity and hesitation. The human, whose name was Daniel, handed her a piece of bread. "You should eat more," he said, his voice calm but firm. She hesitated, her hands trembling slightly before accepting the food. "Why? Why do you help me?" she finally asked, her voice soft but filled with confusion. Daniel sighed, poking the fire with a stick. "Because you needed help," he replied simply. "And because I couldn't just leave you there to die." The alien girl lowered her gaze, her thoughts a storm of emotions. In her world, kindness was rare, often exchanged only for something in return. But this human had given her food, shelter, and even warmth without expecting anything. She took a small bite of the bread, her sharp teeth making it look effortless. "My name is Ziara," she said after a moment of silence. Daniel smiled slightly. "Ziara. That's a nice name." She blinked at him, studying his face. His features were rough, tired, but not unkind. He was different from the stories she had heard about humans, so much different. "You don't fear me?" she asked, tilting her head. Daniel chuckled. "You don't seem that scary." Ziara frowned. "I could have killed you when we first met." "But you didn't," he countered. "That says something about you." The silence between them stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. The fire crackled, and the cold night air wrapped around them like an unseen force. After a while, Ziara spoke again. "I owe you my life, human," she said, her voice steady. Daniel shook his head. "You don't owe me anything, Ziara. Just get better. That's enough." She didn't respond, but deep inside, something in her heart shifted. Trust was not easy for her kind, but maybe, just maybe, this human was different. As the night deepened, they both sat in silence, the warmth of the fire connecting two souls from different worlds. The air inside the shelter was tense. The alien woman, Luria, sat close to the small fire, her large, reflective eyes watching the human, Daniel, as he prepared some food. The storm outside had not calmed, and the heavy rain continued to pound against the cave entrance. Daniel handed her a piece of dried meat. "Here, try this," he said. Luria hesitated but then took it, sniffing the food before carefully biting into it. Her expression shifted from suspicion to surprise. "It's different," she said slowly. Daniel chuckled. "Different good or different bad?" She thought for a moment, then nodded. "Good." A small smile formed on Daniel's lips. Over the past few hours, he had learned more about Luria. She was alone, lost, and injured when he found her. And now she was slowly starting to trust him. "You said you were running from something," Daniel said, breaking the silence. "Who's after you?" Lurea's expression darkened. "Hunters. My people are rare on this planet. Some take us." Daniel frowned. "You mean like, for research, experiments?" She shook her head. "Worse." Her body tensed, and she looked toward the entrance, as if expecting danger at any moment. Daniel clenched his fists. He had heard of aliens being taken by groups who wanted to exploit them, either for power, trade, or something much worse. "You're safe here," he assured her. "I won't let anyone take you." Lurea looked at him, her glowing blue eyes full of doubt. "Why help me, human?" Daniel leaned back against the cave wall, thinking, "Because it's the right thing to do. If I were in trouble, I'd want someone to help me too." She studied him in silence, then spoke softly. "Not all humans think like you." He smirked. "Yeah, well, not all aliens eat food from strangers either." A small laugh escaped her lips, the first one since they met. It was soft, almost musical. Just then, a sound echoed from outside. Footsteps. Lurea's eyes widened in fear. Daniel grabbed his knife and put out the fire, plunging the cave into darkness. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The footsteps grew closer. Someone, or something, was coming. The night was cold, and the stars above flickered like distant lanterns. The alien girl, still weak from her injuries, sat beside the small fire the human had built. She watched him closely, her large, luminous eyes reflecting the flames. "You saved me again," she said softly, her voice carrying both gratitude and confusion. The human shrugged, poking the fire with a stick. "I couldn't just leave you." She tilted her head, a gesture of curiosity. "But why?" "My people, they wouldn't do the same for you." He smiled, his breath visible in the cold air. "Maybe that's the difference between us." A moment of silence passed before she spoke again. "You are strange, human, but I think I like that." The human chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment." Suddenly, a noise echoed through the trees. The alien girl's body tensed, her senses sharp. "Someone is coming," she whispered. The human quickly put out the fire, his heart pounding. "Stay close," he said. From the shadows, glowing eyes emerged. 3 figures stepped forward, their tall, armored bodies unmistakable. The alien girl gasped. "My people." The leader of the group spoke in a sharp, commanding voice. "You are ordered to return with us. This human has no place in our affairs." The girl looked between them and the human, her expression torn. "You don't have to go," the human whispered. She took a deep breath. "I know." Then, without hesitation, she stepped in front of him, raising her chin defiantly. "I will not leave him." The 3 aliens exchanged glances, their surprise evident. The human clenched his fists, ready to fight if necessary. But the alien leader only stared at the girl for a long moment before sighing. "Then you have chosen your path." With that, the aliens turned and disappeared into the darkness. The human exhaled, his shoulders relaxing. That was unexpected. The girl smiled at him, determination shining in her eyes. "I am not leaving the only one who ever truly cared for me." The human couldn't help but smile back. "Then let's get out of here, together." And with that, they vanished into the night, their journey far from over. The night was cold, and the wind howled through the broken windows of the abandoned house. David sat near the small fire he had built, his eyes watching the alien girl, Lyra. She was resting, her breathing slow and steady, but there was still a hint of pain on her face. Lyra had trusted him now. After everything, she knew David would not harm her. He had saved her, protected her, and even shared his food with her when she had nothing. But danger was still near. The people hunting her would not give up so easily. David heard footsteps outside. He quickly put out the fire and signaled Lyra to stay quiet. The sound of boots on the wooden floor outside made his heart race. Someone was searching for them. Lyra looked at him with wide eyes, understanding the danger. She held her breath, her sharp ears catching every sound. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. A shadow moved across the window. David grabbed the metal pipe he had found earlier. If they were caught, he would fight. But Lyra suddenly touched his hand. She shook her head and pointed toward the back of the house. A small opening, just big enough for them to escape. Without making a sound, they crawled toward the hole. David let Lyra go first, then followed her. As soon as they were outside, they ran. The cold air hit their faces, but they didn't stop. Behind them, a loud crash told them the hunters had entered the house. David and Lyra ran into the forest. The trees provided cover, but they needed to go deeper. Suddenly, Lyra stumbled. David caught her before she fell. She was weak. Her injuries were not fully healed. "We have to keep going," David whispered. Lyra nodded, trying to stand. But then, a bright light flashed behind them. The hunters had brought drones. They were scanning the forest, looking for them. David gritted his teeth. He had come too far to let Lyra be taken. He grabbed a rock and threw it toward the opposite direction. The noise distracted the drones, and the lights moved away. Taking the chance, David pulled Lyra forward. They kept running until they found an old cave. Inside, it was dark and safe. They sat down, breathing heavily. Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You keep saving me," she whispered. David gave a small smile. "Because you're my friend." Lyra blinked. Friend. The word felt warm in her heart. She had never had a friend before. Outside, the search continued, but inside the cave. For now, they were safe. As the days passed, a sense of unease grew in the air. The strange connection between the human and the alien woman had become undeniable, and their bond had only deepened over time. Yet there was a lingering question in his mind, one that refused to leave him. What was it about this alien that made her so unique? Why was she so determined to stay by his side? One evening, as they sat together in the living room, the atmosphere felt different. There was something in the air that made him restless. He glanced at the alien woman, her eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and affection. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice soft but firm. He turned toward her, sensing the weight of her words. "What is it?" The alien woman took a deep breath before speaking again. "I'm not just any alien. My species, we are known for our strength and our abilities, but there's more. There's something I didn't want to tell you, something I was afraid you wouldn't understand." His heart skipped a beat. Was she hiding something dangerous from him? The uncertainty grew, but he knew he had to hear her out. "I've been sent to observe humans, to understand your species better," she continued. "But over time, I began to realize something that I didn't expect. I care about you, and I don't want to leave." The admission hit him like a storm. He had known there was something between them, but this was different. His thoughts swirled as he tried to make sense of everything. "You mean, you've been watching me all this time?" he asked, feeling a mix of surprise and confusion. The alien woman nodded, her eyes looking down in shame. "Yes, at first. But I didn't expect to feel this way. I didn't expect to grow attached to you." A wave of emotions washed over him. There was relief, but also a deep sense of betrayal. She had been sent to observe him, yet now she was revealing her true feelings. He didn't know how to respond. This wasn't the ending he had imagined. "I don't know what to say," he admitted, "but I'm glad you're here, even if this is all so unexpected." Her eyes lit up with a gentle smile. "It's all unexpected. But maybe that's what makes it worth it." They sat in silence for a moment, the world outside seeming to fade away. It was as if, for the first time, they both understood each other fully. The bond between them had become something more than just a human and an alien. It was something deeper, something that defied all logic. In that moment, he realized something important. Sometimes, the greatest connections are the ones that come when least expected. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something incredible. The alien woman looked at him one last time, a mixture of hope and uncertainty in her eyes. What happens now? He smiled, his heart finally at ease. Now, we see where this takes us. And for the first time in a long time, he felt that whatever the future held, it was worth facing together. As they walked through the quiet streets, the human couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. He had always believed life was simple, but now nothing seemed easy. An alien woman was in his life, and she had made a strange request. The alien woman, Azza, walked beside him, her glowing skin shimmering softly under the streetlights. She had always been so calm and controlled, but tonight she seemed different. There was something in her eyes, a kind of seriousness that he hadn't seen before. "Are you okay?" the human asked, his voice soft. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the unknown pressing down on them both. Azza paused, turning to face him. She studied his face for a moment, as if deciding how to explain herself. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "Something important." He nodded, unsure of what she was going to say but ready to listen. "You've helped me more than anyone ever has. I've been hiding, running from my own people, and you've been kind," she began. "But now, I want to offer something in return." His eyes widened slightly. "Offer something? What do you mean?" Azza took a deep breath, her usual calm demeanor replaced by something more vulnerable. "I know I'm different from you. I come from a different world, a different life. But what if we could be more than just two people passing by? What if we could be partners?" He was taken aback. "Partners," he repeated. It didn't make sense. How could someone from another planet, someone so different, want to be a partner with him, a human? She nodded, her eyes never leaving his. "I've seen how you live. Your resilience, your ability to keep going no matter what. It's not something I see often. My people, we have different ways. But you have something I admire." He couldn't find the right words to respond. Everything felt so strange. He was just a human, trying to get by. And now, an alien was offering something he couldn't even imagine. Azza smiled slightly, sensing his confusion. "I don't expect you to understand right away," she said. "But just think about it. We don't have to fight alone anymore. Maybe together, we could figure this out." For a moment, he just stood there, lost in thought. He had always lived on Earth, surrounded by people who were similar to him. But Azza, with her alien background and her strange ways, was asking him to change everything he knew. It was hard to imagine, but there was something about her offer that made him pause. Maybe it was her sincerity. Maybe it was the way she looked at him as if she truly believed they could build something together. He finally spoke, his voice unsure but open. "I don't know what the future holds, but maybe we can try. Maybe we can figure it out together." As his eyes softened, a small, hopeful smile forming on her lips. "I think we can." As the days passed, everything changed. Sarah and Sam had grown closer, their bond stronger than ever before. They spent their time in the secret hideout, deep in the forest, away from prying eyes. Sarah, once cautious and reserved, now felt comfortable enough to share her past with Sam. She told him about her home planet, her family, and why she had come to Earth in the first place. "I was running away," she said one evening, her voice soft but clear. "I wasn't supposed to be here. My people, they wanted me to do things I couldn't. So, I fled. But now, I'm not sure where to go." Sam listened intently, never once interrupting her. He understood the weight of her words and the pain in her eyes. It reminded him of his own struggles, the times he felt lost and alone. But now, they weren't alone. They had each other. "Don't worry," Sam said gently. "You're safe with me. We'll figure this out together." It was those words that made Sarah believe. for the first time in a long while, that maybe she could have a future here on Earth, a future not dictated by fear or escape, but by choice. As they sat by the fire, the flames dancing between them, they heard footsteps. Sam tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for the weapon he kept by his side. But Sarah shook her head, a small smile forming on her lips. "It's them," she said. A group of people appeared from the trees, all looking at Sarah with curiosity and awe. They had been watching her for weeks, keeping a distance but always observing. Now they had come to see for themselves if she was truly someone they could trust. One of them, an older man with a kind face, stepped forward. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice filled with understanding. "We've been waiting for you to make the first move. We're here to help." Sam stood, confused and protective. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice firm. "We're people like you," the man replied. "We've been trying to figure out how to help Sarah without making her feel trapped. She's not alone anymore, Sam. We'll protect her." Sam looked at Sarah, who nodded slightly, reassuring him that these people meant no harm. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. The tension in the air began to fade as the group of strangers smiled, their faces now open and friendly. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling a weight lifting from her shoulders. For the first time since landing on Earth, she didn't feel like an outsider. She didn't feel alone. The man smiled warmly. "It's our honor. We're all in this together." As the night went on, Sarah and Sam shared stories with the new group, who had their own stories of survival and hope. And for once, Sarah felt like she could look toward the future with hope, knowing that she had found a new family here on Earth. In that moment, surrounded by people who cared, Sarah realized something that she hadn't fully understood before. Home wasn't just a place. It was the people who cared about you, who stood by you no matter what. And here, in this strange new world, she had finally found her home.